like to get us started. So welcome to your Innovation Grants, Technology, Commerce, and Trade Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Members Buscaino and Krikorian. Mr. Bonin will not be here today. Today marks the third anniversary of the tragic shooting at LAX that resulted in the death of a TSA officer, Geraldo Hernandez. And just wanted to start this meeting with a quick moment of silence to commemorate that on this anniversary. Thank you. Let's get started. Mr. Espinosa, are there any general public comment cards?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no general public comment cards. General public comment is closed. Unless there is an objection from my colleagues, I'd like to move items 4, 5, and 11 through 15 on consent.
I have a question on 4.
Question on 4, so we will not move that one on consent. We'll move items 5, if it's okay with my colleagues, items 5 and 11 through 15 on consent. Any objection? And I assume we have no public comment cards on those items, is that correct?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. No public comments, so it'll be the order. Items 5 and 11 through 15 will be moved on consent. And we will now move to item number 1.
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Carl Cade to the Innovation and Performance Commission for the term ending September 6, 2016. And just to let you know, we are in possession of his withdrawal letter.
Yeah. So, colleagues, Mr. Cade has asked to be withdrawn from consideration, so recommendation is that we receive and file this item. Seeing no objection, it is received and filed. Items number 2 and 3. I'd like to take those two items together. If you would read those into the record.
Item number 2 is a report from the Innovation Technology Oversight Committee relative to executing licensing and amendments to contracts with CGI Technologies Solutions to continue maintenance for the financial management system, financial and performance budgeting, and to add maintenance for the FMS procurement, inventory, vendor self-service, and e-procurement. This one was also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee. And then we have item number 3, which is also a report from the Information Technology Oversight Committee relative to an amendment to the contract with CGI Technologies and Solutions to increase the contract spending authority and to modify the vendor self-service module in the FMS system.
Great, thank you. So we'll hear them together, but we can vote on them separately. So, Mr. Ross, would you start us off with a summary and where you're requesting that we go from here?
Excellent. Ted Ross, General Manager with the Information Technology Agency. I'm joined by Laura Ito, the ITA's Director of Finance and Administration, as well as Debbie Ramos, Assistant General Manager with General Services Department. Certainly those motions are a mouthful, so what I'll try to do is provide just a very quick summary. In 2014, the city initiated what we call FMS 2.0. That's the Financial Management System 2.0 project, where we took the existing city's financial system and we started to integrate and bring on board the city's purchasing system, which is the existing Supply Management System, or SMS. I'm very proud to say that this project is on schedule and on budget. It really comprises of 2 major components. One step is an upgrade of the existing FMS system to version 3.10, and the second aspect is implementing the procurement module, the purchasing system. And I will keep it very summarized, but these are actually very large, very big efforts. The financial management system processes over 135,000 transactions a year. It's used to manage the city's finances. Every vendor payment billed, all receipts received, any budget check, it all goes through the system. And to do something so large as to bring the city's purchasing system onto that same platform has been a very large but also a very successful project. Our upgrade went live October 3rd of last month. So it went live, I would say, without a hitch. Usually what it is the project teams work very diligently to keep the issues at bay and to resolve them, and it's stabilized quite well as a system. We've already implemented substantial improvements to the existing system. The SMS replacement project should go live July of this upcoming year, and that is on schedule. Once we've already completed all sorts of elements around integrated system testing. We've tested 800 different scenarios through the project teams. We've done streamlined electronic orders as a part of this. We've developed a mobile app that will be used by general services staff in the warehouse, so they'll carry their tablets around and perform very efficiently and very effectively the warehousing process. And general services and control have already been doing outreach with all the city departments. There have been 15 sessions to date and more to come. What we expect to have between now and the July timeframe, we'll be doing what we call user acceptance testing, in which city departments all get a hands-on use of the system. They run it through its paces, the same way project team and others have run it through their paces. We bring in all the different subject matter experts. We're looking at an extensive training plan in the coming months, in which over 3,000 city users will be trained. That'll be 8,000 seats of training that will occur between February and May of this upcoming year, utilizing the facilities. And so that's just a little bit of the background of just how big these types of projects are and how grand they are. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take the items a little bit out of order. I think item 3 is probably a good start, and then we'll discuss item 2. Item 3 has a little bit of a background, one of which is actually very related to the council members who are here. Like most city agencies, like most governments, the City of LA procurement process has certainly grown. Each one of you sitting on the committee here could certainly teach a session, a master class on some of those details. And certainly it's resulted in a procurement process. It's very lengthy, it's very complex, and it's difficult for vendors, especially small business, to navigate the city's process. Pursuant to City Council motion on how to streamline the contract process that came through the ad hoc committee on job creation, the ITA has been working over the past several months very closely with Mayor's Office, Controller's Office, City Attorney, General Services, Public Works Contract Administration, City Administrative Office, and other elected official representatives. And as part of that research, we worked very hard to identify the types of technology improvements as well as process improvements that would really move the needle in the way contracting works. As you can see in this report, we worked as a working group to identify the key steps involved in a city contracting process. We identified technologies used, and as you can see in diagram A, the existing process is highly manual. It requires a lot of repetitive work by city departments, and it provides actually poor visibility for city management. So it's kind of an unholy triad, so to speak, when it comes to how that process works. During the course of this research, it became very clear to that working group that there was an immediate opportunity related to the financial management system, and so we wanted to go ahead and move on that. What we identified as the Controller's Office, General Services, and ITA, that by using the same system that we're implementing in July of 2017, this upcoming year, with some configuration in the vendor self-service model, we could actually automate core capabilities in the commodity side, and that those core capabilities could then get leveraged around services and construction services, et cetera, which are significantly more complicated when it comes to city process. So what we identified is that with some minor modifications, or I should say minor configuration to the system, we have an opportunity in which we can make changes that would then be implemented as a part of the go-live so that staff would be trained, et cetera. And what it would involve is this. I'll try to keep it concise and very summarized. We would take the vendor self-service module that we acquired. We would use CGI, our contractor, a very strong partner in this, to be able to create electronic bid opportunities for commodities in the FMS system. Through integration, we would be able to publish them automatically in Bavin, a system that folks are very useful, very accustomed to. We would allow secured access for businesses to register and create a business profile in the FMS system, but the trick is to document it and tailor it in such a way so it's a very easy, very clean use for them, so they feel as if they're really in the same system. So a lot of it is creating a very clean front end for users to make it very simple, while on the back end we're getting a lot of the capabilities of the systems. We would allow bidders to utilize their business profiles to access the module. We would do online bids. Commodity bidders would also be able to do online bid submissions, something we don't have today. It would also allow GSD to do an online bid review and to award them online. So all of this goes from a very manual process in Diagram A to a much more automated, from soup to nuts process in Diagram B. The vendor would perform the work. They would then be able to register for online payments in that very same portal. They would then be able to receive those payments through electronic funds transfer or ACH processes. They can check and see payment status. So really what we're envisioning and what we have the opportunity to do is through this contract amendment is our ability to be able to start to realize an automated process around commodities first, but working towards services and construction contracts later. The expansion of this will have a cost. The cost associated with turning these capabilities on the existing project would be $934,000 and require a change notice on our side. However, you'll notice in the fiscal impact statement there, we've already identified savings in the General Services Department, which they're using to fund this, so there is no general fund impact on making this amendment and implementing this project. There are some small incremental costs associated with the ITA could absorb around the BAVN system, et cetera. But really what we're identifying is a way for us to streamline the vendor experience around commodities, set a platform for us to be able to do the same streamlining around service contracts and construction contracts, which may be smaller in number but are certainly bigger in value. Give us the ability to automate processes for a city department using general services as the very first department to accomplish that. And it gives us the ability to be able to metricize the entire effort. It gives us the opportunity to run a report from beginning to end to showing workflow and showing the process. We're also seeing, in addition, other benefits associated with it around city ethics and some of the other requirements. But we would truly have an automated process which we've never had at the City of Los Angeles, not just an award of a contract and payment, but everything prior to that, all the way back to the bid. So with that, I certainly want to leave the floor open for our partners at General Services. We have full support from Controller's Office and others on this project.
I just want to stress that, we have been looking for ways to make the system more transparent, and this really opens the door to transparency. Currently, as Ted mentioned, a lot of this process is manual, and based on the number of resources, we're only entering summary data, and a lot of the evaluation and analysis is done off the system. This will allow us to do it on the system, and again, it'll provide us with more information, and so we're very excited about being able to make full use of a system that we're already licensed to use, and bring a fully integrated ERP system to the City of LA. So,
Want to add anything?
I can actually address item number 2, agenda item number 2, which is really about the 2 contracts that are foundational to the city's use of the FMS system. The first contract that ends in contract C114341, 41, is our licensing contract, and it enumerates all of the licenses to which the city is entitled through the FMS system. We're amending it right now to add one particular third-party software product, IBM WebSphere, which is required as we add the vendor self-service functionality, because we're now allowing people outside the city network to access the FMS system. So we need to procure this or to add this licensing to our list of entitlements. There is no additional cost on this contract. The second contract that we're amending is our overall maintenance and long-term support contract for all of our FMS licenses. So we're doing a 10-year agreement with CGI, but there's an option to terminate for convenience should the city ever decide that we need to do that. But the commitment for the 10 years allowed us to get a more favorable pricing, and so we're saving about $1.14 million versus doing 2 5-year contracts for this software. And we need to have the maintenance support if we're going to use the software. It's mandatory to pay for maintenance if we're going to use the software. What this gives us is after-hours support and support for some of the customizations that we've had to do for the FMS system. So it's definitely required. And when you think about that, this covers not only the new e-procurement system and the vendor self-service, but also our overall FMS financial management system and performance budgeting. It's at $1.2 million a year. It's not that much money.
Well, I'm excited about this. This is, we talk about on the Ad Hoc Jobs Committee trying to make the city more business-friendly and trying to be more efficient as a city, but also be more open to vendors. And this is doing that. I mean, this is the hard work of doing what we talk about at a 10,000-foot level. You guys are making happen. A couple of questions. You mentioned about tweaking the system because it's an off-the-shelf. Now, when the city first purchased the FMS, it was an off-the-shelf product, and you were customizing it, which is a different approach than we normally did in the past, where we would buy this system and it would be customized for us. So tell us a little bit, how has that worked? Have they been responsive to the customization? Has that approach, which on the surface sounds like a very sensible approach, but has it proven to be that way? Or is there any downside with it?
Certainly. For big enterprise resource planning systems like this, it's become the industry standard to acquire an off-the-shelf system. And then you start off with configuration. That is the functionality that the system gives you to make adjustments inside of the system. And then the prevailing thought is the side B, in which you try to minimize customization, those enhancements that are above and beyond what's off the shelf as much as possible. Being someone who is very familiar with the initial implementation of the financial management system, as well as in the implementation of what we call FMS 2.0, we aggressively reduce the number of customizations. Customizations, and when I say customization, it's that second category, that category in which you're paying the vendor to make those changes. And we only do it where it's absolutely critical, warranted from a compliance perspective within the city or some major operation. So we try to limit those areas. But to the council member's point, when it comes to changing the nature of the system, configuration and customization from that perspective, we do that quite a bit. I think a success could be pointed to the fact that we've been already running 5 years on the financial management system, and it's been audited. It's been running well. We've closed the books on all these different fiscal years. It's actually been quite a successful system. And it's not perfect. No system is perfect. But I do have to give credit to CGI for working very closely with us to run a system in which we're able to accomplish what the city needs to get done in a very efficient way.
And the vendor service module is going to be done in phases? Is that to get feedback as you go along, or how is it going to work?
Absolutely. And so there's certain phase components to it. One aspect is working very directly with the City Department General Services, since they're doing bid creation and they're receiving the online submissions. The other aspect is to create focus groups and work with the vendor community. If I'm going to say you're going to deliver an online bid submission, I want to work with them around the various screens. So we feel very passionately that there's three major customers. There's businesses who we want to simplify the process for. There's departments who we want to automate the process for, and then there's city management who needs to have transparency and visibility so that they can manage the process.
Right, and I want to bring up the point that when we talk about commodities, these are contracts that are awarded by the purchasing agent. So we have a centralized process. We're already planning on utilizing the system because to mirror what we're doing in SMS, which is bid creation is already occurring in SMS, and the results are, as I mentioned, we're manually putting those into SMS today. What this does is it takes us to another level in terms of how we're receiving bids. And in SMS, we're already creating contracts utilizing system functionality. So again, we're mirroring that in the CGI system. So the fact that we've got a centralized system, centralized standardized processes within the purchasing agent makes us a perfect candidate to become sort of the test case for how the vendor self-service will work and how we can kind of use lessons learned to use in terms of evaluating how we would use this system for personal service contracts and or construction contracts.
Yeah, I mean, that's the exciting part about this, too, is going beyond commodities to
Correct.
all the other stuff. And is the timeline of this contract extension allow for that expansion in terms of getting the vendor to work on issues beyond commodities?
In our working group, there is a universal sentiment in the participants, and I'm sure any of them would admit to this, that this is absolutely the right track. But then they'll also very quickly tell me, yes, dear Lord, please let's start with commodities, because personal service contract starts to open up the can to potentially 41 city departments. So we are already starting those conversations. We're working with engineering around construction services. We're working with Bureau of Contract Administration and others. But I think we all know that there's a level of we're going to have to create a standardized process in addition to an automated process around that.
Colleagues, any additional questions? Mr. Corey.
Yeah, thank you. On item number 2, it's been a long, strange trip getting to the point of a useful FMS, and we'll be looking more into the cost of this in budget and finance, but I do think while it's kind of an eye-popping number at first, realizing the savings that we're realizing from having a 10-year term is important in itself, but also I think realizing the savings of having a useful system compared to the old days when we had so much cost associated with failures in that system. We're going to want to look at all of that, but I think you're right. It seems like a bargain compared to what we had. And
I think another item worth mentioning, Laura.
Yeah, actually, for comparison purposes, the prior SMS PeopleSoft software maintenance was about $990,000 a year.
Yeah.
So when you think that that was really only for the commodities procurement element, whereas this one is now the financial management system, the procurement system, the performance budgeting, the
Bundled together.
the vendor self-service. There's everything that we get with CGI is under that 1.2.
yeah, and on the substance of it, on the procurement, I just want to thank you, Mr. Ross, and your staff at ITA for working as you have with my office and with the Jobs Committee and General Services and all of the others who've helped to move us to this point. I think this is one of those head scratchers that people who do business with the city, have wondered, why haven't we done this already? And to get to the point of being able to automate like this, it's not only more efficient, it's not only more cost-effective for the city, it's also going to significantly increase the number of local businesses and smaller businesses that are going to be able to participate in procurement, which is going to create more jobs locally. It's going to disproportionately benefit women and minority businesses because the old system almost required that you had an entire team of support, lobbyists and others to get through the thicket of this procurement process. A lot of that goes away, and it makes it much easier for smaller businesses to be able to participate. And then it's going to be very effective for taxpayers as well, because our procurement process, as we've seen time and again, discourages a lot of competitors from participating. And when you have fewer competitors participating for procurement, you have inflated prices by its nature. And so I'm really excited that this is going to be a money-saving, job-creating measure that's going to help our local economy as well. So I couldn't be more excited about the fact that we're moving forward with this, and I'm eager to get to the next expansions to the other areas as you've described as well.
Excellent.
Thank you. Without objection, we will approve items 2, and then again, we'll approve item 3. So both items are approved, and we'll move to item 4. Okay,
Yeah.
you guys are
Thank you.
on point.
Item number 4 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to amendments with Time Warner Pacific West, LLC, DBA Time Warner Cable, and CenturyLink Communications, LLC, DBA CenturyLink QQC for Internet services at city facilities.
And we have no public comment cards on that item, so we'll turn it to Mr. Roth.
Claudia Aguilar with the City Administrative Officer. The report before you will will be amendments for number 1 for the Time Warner contract, where we're going to be adding 3 years to that contract and possible 2-year, 1-term events for General Manager to be able to execute. This will provide additional services for Internet services at our city facilities. There is also a contract amendment for CenturyLink, which also provides services at various city facilities. The Time Warner contract, we will be increasing compensation by $20 million for a total contract amount for $26 million. And there is no contract amendment dollar change for the CenturyLink. If you have any questions, we will be happy to answer them.
Buscaino.
If I can, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So can you take me back to 2009? Can you detail the RFP process for internet services to city facilities and how we ended up with a contract between both the Time Warner and also CenturyLink?
Yes, Laura Ito with ITA. A little bit of a difficult time recalling that process. What I do recall is we really struggled with getting contracts executed with some of the larger companies, like I believe AT&T, because we couldn't get agreement on the city's limitation of liability requirements. And so we were unable to consummate contracts with some of the proposers, and we ended up with just Time Warner and CenturyLink.
And I noticed in the contract was extended a few times, and the 2009 to 17 proposed contract total of $6 million, and this current contract spans to 2022.
Correct.
An additional 5 years, yet the contract cost increases by $20 million for the total of 26. Right. And can you explain this increase?
Yeah, it was really sort of a in-case increase. It's not that we're necessarily projecting $20 million in usage over the next 7 years, but it was given that we are seeing a lot of increased requests by city departments for more bandwidth. They're often going directly to Time Warner to get that installed at their facilities. So we want to be able to facilitate it. What we realized is that if we did a request for proposal and went through the process of selecting a vendor and negotiating a contract and could make it through that negotiation, particularly on areas like limitation of liability, that would be a 2 to 3 year process. And then to have to switch over providers, assuming we ended up with someone other than CenturyLink and Time Warner, would again be another 2 year process, because to convert or transfer services from one provider to the other requires a great deal of coordination, on-site visits, engineering, and we just knew that to do the entire city to get off Time Warner, which is our primary provider right now, to some other provider would take the 2 years. So it's really, almost a 5 year process, a 5 year endeavor to go through an RFP and be able to cut over and then finalize our services and finish the Time Warner contract.
So aside from, thank you for that explanation, I appreciate it. Aside from increasing the bandwidth, what else are we getting out of the $20 million or a total of $26 million moving forward? I have two, in my district, I have 2 municipal buildings in San Pedro and also in Watts. We just reopened, and thanks for your assistance, in our Watts Civic Center. Can we see improved public Wi-Fi at those sites?
And so you raised the point around Wi-Fi, and that's been one of the difficulties we've had. Inside of city buildings, it has a cost, but it's something where we can implement it through the city effort itself. What we found in some of the remote facilities, the field offices, that we leverage Time Warner. And so that's been part of the increase, is for us to take on the costs associated with leveraging Time Warner to implement Wi-Fi in those various facilities. So we've been working very aggressively around the field offices to make that available, especially for the public. What we also find is certainly through the usage of cloud. Cloud comes with a lot of great benefits, but it certainly it taxes your internet pipe substantially. Mm-hmm. So we've seen just a vast increase when it comes to the use of video, the use of audio, and the use of cloud infrastructure. So we've had to greatly increase our pathways there too. So we've really been working very aggressively to reduce downtime on our network. We've seen great improvements based on some of the efforts we've taken the last couple of years. And so it's the network is something that everyone's riding on, but effectively what you see with Time Warner is those are our internet pipes.
Right. Thank you so much. Those questions, and I'm okay with moving forward, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
So, additional questions? Without objection, then we will approve that item. So approved, and we will move to item number 5. We did on consent. We'll move to item number 6.
Item number 6. Are reports from the Board of Airport Commissioners and the City Attorney, and an ordinance relative to finding that the public interest and necessity require the acquisition by eminent domain of property located at 9520 Belford Avenue in Los Angeles, California, 90054.
Now, on this item, we're going to have a closed session briefly, and then we're going to have an open session on this item. So, apologize for dislocating folks, but we're going to recess now into closed session. Mr. Fauble, would you please read the admonishment for closed session?
Yes. The committee is going to recess the closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4 to confer with its legal counsel related to this matter.
Right. So what that means is anyone who's not specifically here, city employee for this item, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the room for a little bit, and we'll call you back in as soon as we finish the closed session. Again, I apologize for the dislocation, and we'll be back in, I'm guessing about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, but we'll call you back. Okay, thank you all. I think are we back in open session now?
Yes.
Great, we're all set. I just wanted to let folks know how we're going to proceed on the open session. We're going to first hear an oral presentation from the LAWA staff, Debbie Bowers. After the staff report, members of the committee may address questions to Ms. Bowers. Following questions from the committee, the affected property owner or representative on his behalf will be given the opportunity to address the committee. If the owner or his representative have questions for the staff, they would be directed at Ms. Bowers. And then after that, any member of the committee may ask staff any follow-up questions at that point. And then after those questions, we'll close the hearing and determine if we want to adopt the resolution of necessity. So that's the order of things. And so we'll start, as I mentioned, with an oral presentation.
Okay. And this item is a hearing to determine whether the committee wishes to adopt an ordinance approving a resolution of necessity that requests the City Council to authorize commencement of eminent domain proceedings to acquire the property located at 9520 Belfort Avenue in Los Angeles, California. This ordinance does not relate in any way to the compensation to be awarded for the taking of the property, nor does the adoption of this ordinance stop the parties from continuing to negotiate. It is always possible that a settlement could be reached without a trial or a significant litigation on this matter, and that is always our hope. But in this case, for the reasons explained in the staff report and the presentation, we are asking that the committee approve the ordinance so that, subject to City Council approval, staff can move forward with the next legal step in the condemnation process, which is the authorization to bring an eminent domain action to condemn the property. At the close of this hearing, you will be asked to make a few key findings as described in the CAO report and the proposed ordinance. The council file and the presentation you are about to hear will give you the facts necessary to support these findings. The presentation, council file, and all its reference documents will become part of the record of these proceedings. If there are any additional exhibits or other information presented to the committee today, they will be added to the record. If you have any questions about the facts, do not hesitate to ask me. If you have legal questions, please direct those to the legal counsel. The first two findings, that is the public interest or necessity requiring the project and the property being planned is for the greatest good, is for the greatest public good and the least private injury, are applicable to the eminent domain for the acquisition of the property located at 9520 Belfort Avenue, and the remaining findings apply to this parcel. The airports are required to do a Part 150 study, which identifies the contours of property that has incompatible uses due to aircraft noise or to traffic associated with an airport. Under the master plan, staff was directed to complete the acquisition of all the properties within the airport noise mitigation program properties, and we were pursuing voluntary acquisition and using eminent domain as a last resort. The property that we're talking about today, 9520 Belford Avenue, is in the designated area with incompatible uses for properties under the contour. We did make a written offer to the owner of the property back in May of 2016, and then despite some negotiation, no agreement for the sale could be reached. The notice of this hearing and the hearing that will be before the City Council was mailed to the owner of the property on October 13th, 2016. That concludes my presentation. Give it back to the owner.
Thank you. When I look at the apartment on a Google Maps, it's pretty alarming. You see the one residential property surrounded by industrial uses and vacant land. So as you move forward, the residents of the property have been notified that LAWA is commencing eminent domain hearings, and if so, what is the timeline for relocation?
So the timeline is that we'd have to own the property. We have to give another 30-day notice once the eminent domain proceeding has been approved, and then we would go to court and then go through that process. So we're hoping within 90 days after approval of the City Council, we would be able to approach have title to the property and approach the residents for relocation. Right now, we are doing relocations within 60 to 90 days. We have some ongoing for property that we had acquired last December.
Colleagues, any questions for Ms. Bowers at this time? No? Okay, thank you. So we now, if the affected property owner or a representative on his behalf is here, this is the time for him or her to address the committee. So is there a representative from 9520 Belford Avenue here who wishes to speak? Let the record reflect no one is coming forward on that. So with that, unless it's any additional questions from the committee, seeing none, we'll close this hearing, and I guess at this point we will. There's no public comment cards on this, correct?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay then. So I'm going to move that we approve the LAWA recommendation and adopt the city attorney ordinance.
Second.
Without objection, that is the order. Thank you. Okay. Moving to items 7 and 8.
And Mr. Chair, just to clarify on the last item, the LAWA board report does have 3 recommendations. One of them is to approve the resolution of necessity,
Yes.
to approve the ordinance, and also to adopt the determination of the Board of Airport Commissioners on their CEQA. So we're going to be approving.
We're approving all 3 all 3 recommendations have been approved.
Exactly.
Or
Thank you.
Approved without objection. Okay, so I'd like to take items 7 and 8 together. Mr. Espinosa, if you'd read those 2 items.
Yes, item number 7 is a report from the Board of Airport Commissioners relative to 3 7-year contracts with Quest Project Controls, doing business as Construction Management Solutions, Integrated Projects Control Team, a joint venture, and Hill International, APSI, Construction Management Joint Venture, for project control services support of the Capital Improvement Project for Los Angeles World Airports. And number 8 is the Board of Airport Commissioners report relative to 8 7-year contracts with Berg and Associates and Company, CMTS LLC, Leah and Elliott and Company, Incorporated, Jacobs Project Management Company, Jacobson Daniels Associates LLC, Parsons Transportation Group Incorporated, Simpson and Simpson Management Consulting Incorporated, and Veneer ASL LLC for project management and advisory support services and project and construction management services in support of the Capital Improvement Program at Los Angeles World Airports.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Cynthia Guidry, Deputy Executive Director for Los Angeles World Airports. Yes, these two items, items 7 and 8, go hand in hand. They really reflect 11 contracts in total to support our program management and advisory services, our project and construction management services, and our project control support services. The procurement process actually really started when we really looked at our $14 billion modernization program at LAX. As many of you know, the key elements of that program as we look forward is our LAMP program, which is our automated people mover, consolidated rental-car facility. We have a $1.3 billion midfield satellite concourse project that we're already underway on. And we also have nearly $6 billion in airline and tenant and airfield work that we have right in front of us. It's an exciting time for the airport, but we are looking at the robust program ahead, and these programs require extensive support services by several different contracts, and that's in essence what these two items are before you. Let me just say, starting in April of this year, we did start the procurement process with the intent of not just providing support needs for our overall capital program, but also with the intent of awarding small and medium-sized firms. We wanted to create greater opportunity for the industry out there, and so we did conduct a pretty extensive pre-proposal conference where we had nearly 350 attendees attend that conference. We talked about the entire program as well as a need for requiring that all of these contracts would still need a 20% SBE as well as points for a local business if they were indeed within the city of Los Angeles. The business community responded very favorably. We did receive 33 proposals from various firms, and which was great. It was a great turnout for us. It's something that we're excited to see. We want to see a lot of proposals on our procurement processes. But this time, we did also see several firms. This was their first time submitting to LAWA, and in some cases, the city of Los Angeles, and so we were excited about that. And after the extensive review process, we settled on the 11 firms that we have today. And of that 11, 5 are small firms, and 3 are medium, and 3 are large. But they do cover a broad spectrum of needs. The program management services is really more of an advisory services. They're looking at all of our different capital improvement needs. Are looking across the board, whether it's LAMP related or an airfield project or a terminal project. They're looking at it all. So they provide us with various services to support the schedule, the cost that we're looking at their program, the implementation, if you will, and the strategy in moving forward. Our project and construction management, if you will, is more of it's a staff augmentation set of firms that really provide engineers, estimators, different folks that will look at all of our projects, and we procure those or need those or solicit those individuals from those firms as needed. And the project controls they dive into the details of the everyday management of each one of our projects as far as estimating needs and schedules and different things to support the project teams. So we're certainly excited as we move forward. And one of the challenges, if you will, that we did look at in coming up with the long term is looking at what are the overall needs, what is the extensive time frame that we're looking at as far as our program, and we recognize with the LAMP program that we know we're saying we're delivering APM by 2023 and other different elements within that time frame. We did not want to just piecemeal different contracts and have short terms, but really wanted to look at firms that we felt that could be with us along the way of our entire capital program. So that is the reason for the 7-year term that we're asking for today. And then as we estimated our actual contract values, we looked at the proposed delivery schedules for each of our projects. We looked at the oversight we felt was needed and determined the need for each contract value moving forward. And so today we're seeking your approval. We certainly are excited for what we have in store for us, but it is a challenge that we're willing to meet. That's it.
Great. additional opening comments, or?
Jim House, City Administrative Office. I reviewed item number 7 on behalf of the CAO, and we recommend approval.
Bill Kreitz of the CAO. I reviewed report number 8, or item number 8, and we considered this very carefully, and we recommend approval as well.
Great. And it seems great. And you were talking in the beginning about the additional inclusion with local businesses and some of the things that you've been doing toward that realm. Could you elaborate a little bit more? How is this RFP different to facilitate that? I mean, you mentioned some of the things that we're actually doing on the ground about it, but I understand the RFP was also a little different to make that happen.
Yes, it was. And I really have to congratulate the airport staff for really moving forward and doing something different. And that is we actually put in the scoring criteria, additional points if they were a local business. And so that was sort of bonus points, if you will, that at the end of the day, most of the firms did achieve those points, but it was something that we haven't done before. We actually put it in the scoring criteria. So that sent a message to the business community that we're taking this seriously and that we're looking for firms that are here, as well as, it's not just about the talent, but we also want to partner with folks that are also have offices here in LA. So it was a good response. So that's a different procurement process for us, if you will, of actually putting it as far as in the criteria for scoring.
It seems to make a lot of sense. I don't even know why we hadn't done it in the past.
In the past, I know.
But hopefully it's a positive thing we'll continue to build on as we move forward. And then overseeing these 11 separate contracts in compliance with small business goals, how are we going to be able to, oversee all that in these 2 years? And it's a lot to manage.
Well, we didn't start this effort without first thinking about the administrative management, if you will, of all of these contracts. And we have set up a team, a pretty robust team internally within the City of Los Angeles Airport Group to really look at all the different firms and make sure that, one, there's active communication going back and forth with all of the firms. And so we've established an ongoing meeting, if you will, to really talk to them and hear what the concerns and issues might be, but as well as just in our overall tracking each and every month of all of these firms. We have an administrative team that's deep and is already positioned and ready to manage all the efforts moving forward.
Great. Colleagues, any additional questions or comments? No? Great. Then the recommendation will be to approve the CAO and LAWA recommendations. Does this one have cards? No. We have cards on this item?
Yes, on item number 8, we have 2 cards.
Yes, I was thinking those were the next one. Thank you very much. We have 2 public comment cards. So there's no recommendation yet. We're going to hear the public comment cards. You just got a little foreshadowing of what it might be. But that could change. These public comment cards could change that, and I want to leave that possibility open. So thank you all very much, and we'll now hear from Anna Kubas, followed by Kurt Schwager.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Anna Kubas, and I work for Vanner Construction Management, based here in Los Angeles. Vanner ASL, which is the joint venture between Vanner Construction and ASL Systems, is proud to partner with the city to make LAX a world-class airport. Since 2010, Vanner has provided on-call construction support services and managed new and modernization projects for LAX. Under this contract, Vanner ASL will provide aviation expertise needed in the form of project construction, design management services, change management, and divisional support. Our company was founded in 1984 by Frank Dominguez. We are a leading full-service program, project, and construction management firm. Vanner is now proudly run by his daughter, Doreen Dominguez, so we are a woman and minority-owned company that is also a certified local business enterprise. In addition to aviation, Vanner provides services for LAUSD, LACCD, LA Metro, and LA County. Our joint venture partner, ASL, is here, and they're an industry leader. We're very privileged to work with the city and look forward to making our airport a world-class airport. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Kurt Schwager? Schwager.
Afternoon, council members. Kurt Schwager, Jacobson Daniels, and we're one of those small firms that really benefited from the city and LAWA's forward thinking. We are honored and humbled to be selected as a prime contract for program management services, and we just can't thank you enough. And it's not just about this contract. It really happened for us 3 years ago when we had a small support role on the MAP LAX project. And through the city's First Source program, we were able to hire and find great people. We were able to establish our local office, and as our responsibilities grew, our presence grew here in Los Angeles. And so we're now hiring more people through First Source. We're relocating people from our other offices to Los Angeles to work on this project. We're expanding our presence at the Skyview, and we're really thrilled about the future. So I'm really here to say we view our success as the city and LAWA's success, and sincerely thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. Hearing that public testimony, I think I'm going to stick with the recommendation and approve the CAO and LAWA recommendations.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the speakers convinced me, so I'm with you.
So without objection, that will be the order. And we will move to item, we have item 9.
And item number 9 is a Board of Harbor Commissioners report relative to the agreement for the Alameda Corridor Transportation Authority, amended and restated use and operating agreement to incorporate previous amendments, replace the operating committee with an alternative decision-making process, and update the provisions to reflect current conditions and practices.
Welcome. Thank
Good afternoon. Tony Gioiello, Deputy Executive Director of the Development of the Port of Los Angeles. With me today is Heather McCloskey. Go ahead.
Heather McCloskey, I'm Deputy City Attorney for the Port.
I'd like to start by giving maybe a little background on the Alameda Corridor and the ACTA, the Alameda Corridor Transportation Authority. So the Alameda Corridor is a 20-mile freight rail expressway linking the ports of LA and Long Beach to the intercontinental rail network near downtown LA. The corridor was built primarily as an environmental mitigation project to accommodate port growth. It consolidated 4 low-speed rail lines into a single grade-separated 40 miles per hour line, eliminating conflicts at more than 200 grade separations, or grade crossings, and improving traffic flow in the surrounding communities. The project's centerpiece is a 10-mile long trench, mid-corridor trench, which carries freight trains on 3 tracks in an open trench, 35-foot deep and 51-foot wide. The Union Pacific Railroad and the BNSF Railway are the 2 Class 1 railroads that use the corridor. More than 226,000 trains have moved through the Alameda Corridor since operations began in April 2002, carrying close to 32.2 million containers and removing these containers from local freeways. The corridor handles roughly 1/3 of all containers moving through the 2 ports. The Alameda Corridor Authority, or ACTA, is a joint powers authority created under the California state law. ACTA was created by the cities of LA and Long Beach. It is governed by a 7-member governing board that includes a councilperson from each city, a harbor commissioner from each port, the executive directors from each port, and an LA Metro board member. ACTA was created to develop, finance, construct, and operate the Alameda Corridor. Following completion of construction, ACTA's primary function is now to collect the fees from the railroads that the railroads pay to use the corridor, pay the debt service on the bonds sold to build it, and arrange for its maintenance. The ports, the railroads, and ACTA formed a public-private partnership and entered into the Alameda Corridor Use and Operating Agreement dated October 12, 1998, which governed all aspects of operations, revenue collection, and maintenance. Pursuant to the agreement, decisions involving the maintenance and train operations were to be made by a 4-member operating committee, comprised of 1 representative from each port and each railroad. The port representatives on the committee were appointed by the respective harbor commissions. ACTA is not a member of the operating committee, but carries out the decisions made by the committee. Decisions made by the operating committee include, but are not limited to, establishing maintenance and operating standards, determining the annual maintenance and capital budget, periodically selecting a maintenance contractor, and determining how trains are dispatched and how security is to be provided. So why are we here today? So in 2014, the County of Los Angeles, in connection with its compliance duties under the state's Political Reform Act, made inquiries regarding the function and composition of the operating committee. In August of 2015, the ports and the railroads sought written advice from the state's Fair Political Practices Commission as to whether the operating committee falls under the purview of the Act. In March of 2016, the Commission issued an advice letter concluding that the operating committee is itself a local government agency for purposes of the Act, and therefore would be required to adopt a conflict of interest code and require its members to file certain disclosure statements involving financial holdings. Because the railroad committee members are stockholders in their companies, they would be essentially barred from voting. Since 3 of 4 votes is required to pass an item, decision-making would come to a standstill. As the railroads directly pay nearly 70% of the cost of operations, in addition to the use fees they pay to use the corridor, they would be denied a say in the items that they pay for. So the amendment in front of you today, after council of the railroads and the ports worked diligently with our county and with one another to structure an alternative decision-making process, the Alameda Corridor amended and restated use and operating agreement for which approval is sought resolves the issue by vesting decision-making in the 4 respective entities as opposed to specific individuals within the entities. In the case of the Port of Los Angeles, decisions would be made by our Harbor Commission. So the amendment in front of you today, it actually does 3 things. One, it incorporates an amendment that was done in 2006 into the agreement, and that had to do with some transload issues that were resolved like a while back. It removes some of the outdated construction provisions in the agreement because we built the corridor. And it replaces the operating committee with this alternative decision-making process, which basically makes decisions come to the Board of Harbor Commissioners instead of the individual that was appointed to the committee. So we can answer any questions you may have on this.
So the approval process for the item before, under the operating committee, how did that work? Were those public meetings or?
They were public meetings, but they were not. The meetings were public.
They were public meetings held consistent with the Brown Act.
They were consistent with the Brown Act.
Absolutely, yes.
Just that the members did not file the 700 forms, the disclosure forms that we normally are required to do. The port representatives, which I was the port representative on this committee, had no problem filing. But because of, again, the financial interest that the railroad representatives would have, they would always have a conflict. And so the railroads did not want to, or could not actually comply with that provision.
Okay, and will the Board of Harbor Commissioners need to act on the previous actions taken by the operating committee besides the things that we're incorporating in? Will this new entity have to
go back past decisions? No.
No, they can still stand. So there's nothing will invalidate the previous decisions.
That's my understanding.
That's right. All the decisions made previously were through like a calendar year. So
right.
For that year's operating and maintenance budget. So those items were decided upon, acted upon, and now new decisions need to be made for upcoming maintenance and operating budgets.
Okay. Bruce Cannon, I see you had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. Thank you for the report. I too sit on the ACTA board and represent the city of Los Angeles. And I understand the reasoning behind this effort to fall in compliance with the FPCC. The question is, indicates here on your presentation, replaces the operating committee with an alternative decision-making process. Have we identified that alternative decision-making process just yet?
Yes.
And what is that?
In the presentation you have a fairly, looks like a complex
Unless I missed it, I'm sorry.
chart of those
Oh, here it
decision
is.
making.
Okay.
So
I see what's being proposed. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, my oversight.
It looks a little complex, but
Yes.
basically what's going to happen is the parties will get together to agree on. Usually, this is going to be a budget issue. The larger items that are brought before had been before the committee were budget items, some agreements and things like that. So the entities will individually get together, discuss the items, and agree to the items. Once they agreed upon, they will forward it to ACTA as the entity. ACTA will forward it to the individual, the four entities, the two ports, the two railroads. Then each entity will go through its own decision and approval process. For the Port of LA, we'll go to our harbor commissioners and get those approvals. Once all the entities have
you would report back.
Made a decision, and we'll report back
to the board, ACTA board. Okay,
correct.
Understood. Thank you.
So it could still be the same people in theory, but now they're representing, they have to get the decision made by their underlying authority, is that?
Correct. Correct. It'll be more transparent than what was there. Our boards are public meetings, they're noticed, there'll be presentations, so it is more public, more transparent.
Because there's an extra step that before those individuals can act, they have to have that formal authority which goes through a public process. But then it's still the same makeup of folks who then act. No, I'm getting...
Well, the same people are involved somewhere making a recommendation, but they're going to be making a recommendation to their governing bodies, whatever that is. True.
Additional questions? Okay. So then the recommendation will be to approve the recommendations. And seeing no objection, that'll be the order. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we're going to skip over 10 for the moment and move to the special. And I'll explain that in a minute. They're very, very similar. So I guess we have formally adjourned the session or suspend?
We are recessing
Recess, yeah.
the regular, and then we'll come back.
We'll recess the regular session, and we'll call the special agenda into question. I'm joined by my colleagues, Buscaino, Mr. Krikorian. We're now in our special session. Anything else I have to say? Magic words to get us in our special session?
No.
All right. Boom. Special session. So, welcome.
Good afternoon.
And would you like me to read our item into the record?
Yeah, if you'd read the special to the record.
Yes. Item number 1 in the special agenda is a consideration of an addendum, which includes a revised mitigation monitoring and report plan to 2012 Environmental Impact Report, Environmental Impact Statement, certified on June 7, 2012, and Board of Harbor Commissioners Report dated October 31st, 2016, relative to the Ninth Amendment to the permit between the Los Angeles Harbor Department and Eagle Marine Services Ltd. to extend the term of the proposed berth 302 to 306 APL Container Terminal Project to be operated by Eagle Marine Services.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jack Hedge. I'm the Director of Cargo and Industrial Real Estate at the Port. To my left is Don Liu, the Deputy Executive Director. To my right sits Steve Otero, one of the city attorneys, Janice Sidley, the city attorney and chief counsel of the port, and Chris Cannon, the director of environmental management for the port. So we brought everybody we could today to talk to you about this. What we are asking you to consider today is the Ninth Amendment to permit number 733 between the port and Eagle Marine Services. This is merely an extension of the current permit for these premises. It is an extension for 16 years from the current term of the permit and will extend to the maximum term allowable under the city charter, which is 50 years. So that's why we're coming to you and want to discuss this with you. The amendment that's referred to, or the addendum to the EIR that's referred to in the preamble, is the environmental entitlement that allows this amendment to go forward. This amendment was studied under the auspices of the 2012 EIR, which was certified by the board at the time, which considered a larger project, a construction and development project at the time, that would have expanded the footprint and the capacity of the terminal. This amendment does not contemplate that expansion. but the mitigation measures that were derived from that EIR are being implemented under this permit. So in effect, what we have is an extension of term, a much smaller cargo capacity than was studied in the 2012 EIR, but the implementation of the mitigation measures that were associated with that. So a smaller throughput with a higher level of environmental compliance for an extended period of time. So we think it's a very compelling argument to move forward with this. I would like to note that we are here instead of Gene Soroka. Gene is traveling on business in Asia, but he did send his regards to this committee. I want to emphasize again that this amendment merely emphasizes the current terms and conditions of the permit and incorporates the mitigation measures from the 2012 EIR. It also cleans up one little sort of housekeeping issue in the permit related to the tariff, the port's tariff. Contractually, at the time the permit was originally installed, the tariff, as it changed over time, was precluded. This takes away that housekeeping error in the original permit terms. But there is, again, I want to reemphasize, there is no project and no expansion of the facilities with this amendment. If in the package that you were handed earlier, on the third page is a site view of the premises of the site. There's an overlay there that shows the premises of Pier 300. It is our second largest volume facility in the harbor, only after Pier 400. Generated approximately 1 million TEUs of cargo through that facility last year, about $55 million in revenue to the Harbor Department. That equates to thousands of FTEs on site and throughout the system, and millions of dollars in tax revenue to the city and the state. If you'll note in the overview, there is an extension of land out to the side from the property. That was the area that was studied in the original 2012 EIR, and again, it's not being incorporated into the premises in this amendment.
What are do we have future plans there, Jack?
No future plans there at this time. We'll get into that if and when they come to us with a project idea, but at this time there's no future plan for that with the new owners. The ops will continue on the site as is, with the exception of the implementation of the mitigation measures. Will require them to change out equipment to be the best available technology from an environmental standpoint, and changing out their ship-to-shore cranes to be able to handle the larger volume vessels, the larger ships that we'll call at the site. This implementation will make this facility one of the cleanest and most efficient on the West Coast, on the U.S. West Coast. A little bit more detail about the EIR that was certified in 2012. Again, it was to allow this facility to be developed and constructed and expanded, and it would have allowed up to 3.4 million TEUs to flow through that facility at the time. That was the capacity that was studied at the time. This amendment and expansion doesn't contemplate anywhere near that. In fact, it's anticipated that only about 2.4 million TEUs will ever flow through this facility, given its current footprint, and that's the maximum that the new owners are looking at. So it is that additional capacity wouldn't be extended, but that additional capacity was what drove those original mitigation measures. And so implementing those mitigation measures on a smaller throughput should derive incrementally better output, environmental output than we had contemplated originally. The project was deemed to have started at one time because of the installation of 4 cranes that were called for the bigger cranes to allow for larger vessels to come in. That was a practical accommodation that was made. The ships simply got bigger and need to be handled efficiently. And so those 4 cranes were installed. They weren't used for the first couple of years while we worked through this amendment, but now the amendment is in place, they can fully utilize those cranes, and they will be replacing the balance of their cranes over time with this amendment. And the extension of time allows them enough operating period to be able to amortize out the cost of that changeover of that equipment. Just going forward, one of the things I did want to mention here too is one of the things, the big benefit that this gives the Harbor Department, gives the port, this extension, is it solidifies the port's position and long-term economic outlook. There's an awful lot of volatility right now in the industry. I know you've all heard about the Hanjin bankruptcy back in August. Just prior to that, the two of the major Chinese carriers had merged. Yesterday it was announced that the three Japanese carriers are merging. So things are very volatile, things are very fluid right now. Getting this, allowing this amendment and extension to go through and shoring up the volume that's going to come to the port will preserve the port's position and economic viability well into the future. And all that cargo volume translates into jobs and tax revenue for the local economy. So we think it's vitally important to the future of the port that this be done in an expeditious manner. I don't really have anything else to add at this time. If you have any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to answer them, as will the rest of the team here at the table. So thank you.
So is this now going to be a trend we're going to see with other terminal leases to go to the 50 years?
I don't know that it's a trend that we'll see. I think it's just the dynamics of this particular investment, given the level of investment that was required to move this forward, and the remaining term on the original lease, really of only 10 years left. That was not enough time to amortize the investment that was going to be required at this facility.
So I see the benefits in terms of the economics and the stability, and you were mentioning some good environmental things. I just want to make sure there's no negative impact on the environment, or at least that our eyes are wide open. In terms of, is there anything that we're locking in here that we won't be able to change, that we would have been able to change from an environmental mitigation perspective?
I may not be the right person to answer that. I'll let Chris Cannon, but none that I'm aware of. And I'll let Chris Cannon speak to more detail to that.
Well, first of all, the mitigation measures that were identified in the document back in 2012 and that would be now implemented would bring us up to the cleanest available equipment today. But in addition to that, the mitigation measures have technology reopeners that kick in every few years, 3 to 5 years, which allows us to add more and more clean equipment and new technologies as they come along. Certainly, as we do things like update the Clean Air Action Plan and other things, those will be incorporated into those technology reopeners at those times.
Do you think we have enough? Because that would be the one criticism I could see, is if someone says, well, the world's going to change in those number of years, and we may be we may want to require a little bit more. But you're saying that's out there with these reopeners.
It is, and we've talked. Obviously, some things are still being discussed on the Clean Air Action Plan, but we've talked about asking terminals to really start to be a little more proactive in connection with those reopeners and submit plans for modification of equipment and new technologies as part of those reopeners. And so those are things that we've talked about doing, and certainly would be doing with this one as well as other terminals.
And besides the reopeners, are there other points in the process where the port could insert new provisions before 2043?
I don't think that there's other types of reopeners. As far as the environmental requirements, those are the ones that are designed to do that. There's different types of things associated with the Clean Truck Program and so forth, but they're all really tied to those types of reopeners. I don't think there's any unique thing different than that.
There are opportunities at various points during the lease, though. There's a rent reset provision in the lease every 5 years, and that gives us the opportunity to come back and look at any additional amendments or things that we might want to make at those times, too. So we have a couple of different avenues to look at things during the term of the lease.
Okay. Colleagues?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your effort to the entire port leadership team. I understand we have to be prepared for the future and continue to keep our competitive edge intact, and also prepare for ourselves for these alliances that have already formed. And at the same time, ensuring that we look at these mitigating factors that improve our overall, not only economy, but also the environment as well. Maybe a question for Chris. How does this prepare us for the AQMP that AQMD is gearing up for after the first of the year?
Well, two things. First of all, as I said, it would get us to the cleanest cargo handling equipment very quickly. And so what that does is it reduces NOx.
Right,
and as
right.
you know, NOx is the big thing to be concerned about. And so that would immediately begin to reduce NOx with cargo handling equipment. And then going forward, as I said, with technology reopeners and our plan to be more aggressive with our existing leases and those reopeners, we're actually going to instead of sitting around and waiting for them to come to us, we're going to ask the terminals to be a little more proactive and talk to us about procurement plans, especially in light of things like the AQMP NOx concerns that you have as a board member. And so those things are built into the lease as well. That's
Just another great effort. It just seems that the AQMD continues to point to both ports on being the number one emitter of DPMs, and it's something that we continue to scratch our heads with, and we continue to also celebrate the fact that we've seen reduction in NOx and SOx, over 80%.
Yes.
And this item before us, colleagues, will continue to do everything we can to remain competitive, but also, improve our environment in and around the impacted communities. So my last question, does this effort, this item before us, help us prepare ourselves for another visit of the Ben Franklin?
We certainly hope so.
Good.
That's the intention here, is that we can handle the big Ben Franklin and its sister ships to come.
Right. Good. Ask for approval.
Great. Seeing no objection, recommend that we approve this.
And just for the records, we have no cards on this, correct?
Yes, we have no cards on this item. So seeing no cards on this item, no public comment.
Sorry, one second. The proposed terms that we have in this, was this in the recommendation that was circulated in advance?
The very last page of the handout for everybody is what ultimately we are asking council to do, and that is in the transmittal letter as well. Okay. So it matches where what we're asking for the council to take into consideration. It's all matches and is one and the same.
Okay.
So.
The same as what we had on item 10.
I just wanted to make sure that it was on the record, uploaded on the system for the public.
Perfect. So
And if you'd like, I could read. Would you like me to read those in?
I would.
Okay,
please.
All right. So our request of the council is that you consider the determination by the LA Harbor Board of Commissioners that the proposed action is consistent with CEQA and in accordance with the addendum to the certified EIR prepared for the berth 302 to 306 APL Container Terminal Project in 2012, the finding of no new significant impacts or effects other than those previously analyzed in the 2012 EIR, and approve the Harbor Department Resolution number 16-8009, authorizing the Ninth Amendment to Permit number 733, including the revised mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and make a finding that this permit extension is in the best interest of the city.
Thank you.
Great. So then we are approving the Board of Harbor Commissioners report that is dated October 31st, 2016, as you've just read into the record. So that is the order in front of us, and that's clear. So seeing no objection, that'll be the order. And we will now adjourn the special session, and we will return to the regular session, and we'll move to item number 10, which I assume there are no, are there any cards for item 10?
No, Mr. Chair.
There are no cards for item 10. Colleagues, item 10 is virtually identical to the special session. However, it refers to the Commissioner's report dated October 25th. We just approved in the special the one that was dated October 31st. So item 10 is no longer necessary and was missing a few pieces in terms of the agendizing it. So my recommendation is that we receive and file item 10. Seeing no objection. Okay, receive and file item 10, which is specifically the Board of Harbor Commissioners report that is dated October 25th. So we're receiving and filing the 25th date. Seeing no objection, that is the order. Is there anything else on our agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.